What's up, folks? I'm Dan, and welcome to I've Been Meaning to Read That, the show where I read books out loud that I've been meaning to read. Let's go. Folks, a day is coming. A day where I don't regularly stay up till midnight watching reruns of Malcolm in the Middle, drinking bourbon, and eating too many snacks. And when that day comes, the world better watch out. I'm going to be unstoppable. Let's get into The Count of Monte Cristo. Chapter 79, The Lemonade. Morrel was in fact very happy. Monsieur Noirtier had just sent for him, and he was in such haste to know the reason of his doing so that he had not stopped to take a cab, placing infinitely more dependence on his own 2 legs than on the 4 legs of a cab horse. He had therefore set off at a furious rate from the Rue Millet, and was hastening with rapid strides in the direction of the Faubourg Saint-Honoré. Morrel advanced with a firm, manly tread, and poor Barrois followed him as best he might. Morrel was only 31, while Barrois was 60 years of age. Morrel was deeply in love, and Barrois was dying with heat and exertion. These 2 men, thus opposed in age and interests, resembled 2 parts of a triangle, presenting the extremes of separation, yet nevertheless possessing their point of union. This point of union was Noirtier, and it was he who had just sent for Morrel, with the request that the latter would lose no time in coming to him, a command which Morrel obeyed to the letter, to the great discomfiture of Barrois. On arriving at the house, Morrel was not even out of breath, for love lends wings to our desires. But Barrois, who had long forgotten what it was to love, was sorely fatigued by the expedition he had been constrained to use. The old servant introduced Morrel by a private entrance, closed the door of the study, and soon the rustling of a dress announced the arrival of Valentine. She looked marvelously beautiful in her deep mourning dress, and Morrel experienced such intense delight in gazing upon her that he felt as if he could almost have dispensed with the conversation of her grandfather. But the easy chair of the old man was heard rolling along the floor, and he soon made his appearance in the room. Noirtier acknowledged by a look of extreme kindness and benevolence the thanks which Morrel lavished on him for his timely intervention on behalf of Valentine and himself, an intervention which had saved them from despair. Morrel then cast on the invalid an interrogative look as to the new favor which he designed to bestow on them. Valentine was sitting at a little distance from them, timidly waiting the moment when she would be obliged to speak. Noirtier fixed his eyes on her. "Am I to say what you told me?" asked Valentine. Noirtier made a sign that she was to do so. "Monsieur Morrel," said Valentine to the young man, who was regarding her with the most intense interest, "my grandfather, Monsieur Noirtier, had 1,000 things to say which he told me 3 days ago, and now he has sent for you that I may repeat them to you. I will repeat them then, and since he has chosen me as his interpreter, I will be faithful to the trust, and will not alter a word of his intentions." "Oh, I am listening with the greatest impatience," replied the young man. "Speak, I beg of you." Valentine cast down her eyes. This was a good omen for Morrel, for he knew that nothing but happiness could have the power of thus overcoming Valentine. "My grandfather intends leaving this house," said she, "and Barrois is looking out for suitable apartments for him in another." "But you, Mademoiselle de Villefort, you who are necessary to Monsieur Noirtier's happiness." "I?" interrupted Valentine. "I shall not leave my grandfather. That is an understood thing between us. My apartment will be close to his. Now, Monsieur de Villefort must either give his consent to this plan or his refusal. In the first case, I shall leave directly, and in the second, I shall wait till I am of age, which will be in about 10 months. Then I shall be free. I shall have an independent fortune, and—" "And what?" demanded Morrel. "And with my grandfather's consent, I shall fulfill the promise which I have made you." Valentine pronounced these last few words in such a low tone that nothing but Morrel's intense interest in what she was saying could have enabled it to hear them. "Have I not explained your wishes, grandpapa?" said Valentine, addressing Noirtier. "Yes," looked the old man. "Once under my grandfather's roof, Monsieur Morrel can visit me in the presence of my good and worthy protector, if we still feel that the union we contemplated will be likely to ensure our future comfort and happiness. In that case, I shall expect Monsieur Morrel to come and claim me at my own hands. But alas, I have heard it said that hearts inflamed by obstacles to their desire grow cold in time of security. I trust we shall never find it so in our experience." "Oh," cried Morel, almost tempted to throw himself on his knees before Noirtier and Valentine, and to adore them as two superior beings. "What have I ever done in my life to merit such unbounded happiness?" "Until that time," continued the young girl in a calm and self-possessed tone of voice, "we will conform to circumstances and be guided by the wishes of our friends, so long as those wishes do not intend finally to separate us. In a word, and I repeat it, because it expresses all I wish to convey, we will wait." "And I swear to make all the sacrifices which this word imposes, sir," said Morel, "not only with resignation, but with cheerfulness." "Therefore," continued Valentine, looking playfully at Maximilian, "no more inconsiderate actions, no more rash projects, for you surely would not wish to compromise one who from this day regards herself as destined, honorably and happily, to bear your name." Morel looked obediently to her commands. Noirtier regarded the lovers with a look of ineffable tenderness, while Barrois, who had remained in the room in the character of a man privileged to know everything that passed, smiled on the youthful couple as he wiped the perspiration from his bald forehead. "How hot you look, my good Barrois," said Valentine. "I have been running very fast, mademoiselle, but I must do Monsieur Morel the justice to say that he ran still faster." Noirtier directed their attention to a waiter, on which was placed a decanter containing lemonade and a glass. The decanter was nearly full, with the exception of a little, which had been already drunk by Monsieur Noirtier. "Come, Barrois," said the young girl, "take some of this lemonade. I see you are coveting a good draught of it." "The fact is, mademoiselle," said Barrois, "I am dying with thirst, and since you are so kind as to offer it to me, I cannot say I should at all object to drinking your health and a glass of it." "Take some, then, and come back immediately." Barrois took away the waiter, and hardly was he outside the door, which, in his haste, he forgot to shut, than they saw him throw back his head and empty to the very dregs the glass which Valentine had filled. Valentine and Morel were exchanging their adieu in the presence of Noirtier when a ring was heard at the doorbell. It was the signal of a visit. Valentine looked at her watch. "It is past noon," said she, "and today is Saturday. I dare say it is the doctor, grandpapa." Noirtier looked his conviction that she was right in her supposition. "He will come in here, and Monsieur Morel had better go. Do you not think so, grandpapa?" "Yes," signed the old man. "Barrois!" cried Valentine. "Barrois!" "I am coming, mademoiselle," replied he. "Barrois will open the door for you," said Valentine, addressing Morel. "And now remember one thing, monsieur officer, that my grandfather commands you not to take any rash or ill-advised step which would be likely to compromise our happiness." "I promised him to wait," replied Morel, "and I will wait." At this moment Barrois entered. "Who rang?" asked Valentine. "Dr. d'Avrigny," said Barrois, staggering as if he would fall. "What is the matter, Barrois?" said Valentine. The old man did not answer, but looked at his master with wild, staring eyes, while, with his cramped hand, he grasped a piece of furniture to enable him to stand upright. "He's going to fall," cried Morel. The rigors which had attacked Barrois gradually increased. The features of the face became quite altered, and the convulsive movement of the muscles appeared to indicate the approach of a most serious nervous disorder. Noirtier, seeing Barrois in this pitiable condition, showed by his looks all the various emotions of sorrow and sympathy which can animate the heart of man. Barrois made some steps towards his master. "Ah, sir," said he, "tell me what is the matter with me. I am suffering. I cannot see. 1,000 fiery darts are piercing my brain. Don't touch me. Pray don't." By this time his haggard eyes had the appearance of being ready to start from their sockets. His head fell back, and the lower extremities of the body began to stiffen. Valentine uttered a cry of horror. Morel took her in his arms, as if to defend her from some unknown danger. "Monsieur d'Avrigny! Monsieur d'Avrigny!" cried she in a stifled voice. "Help! Help!" Barrois turned round and with a great effort stumbled a few steps, then fell at the feet of Noirtier, and, resting his hand on the knee of the invalid, exclaimed, "My master!" My good master." At this moment, Monsieur de Villefort, attracted by the noise, appeared on the threshold. Morel relaxed his hold of Valentine, and, retreating to a distant corner of the room, remained half hidden behind a curtain. Pale, as if he had been gazing on a serpent, he fixed his terrified eye on the agonized sufferer. Noirtier, burning with impatience and terror, was in despair at his utter inability to help his old domestic, whom he regarded more in the light of a friend than a servant. One might, by the fearful swelling of the veins of his forehead and the contraction of the muscles round the eye, trace the terrible conflict which was going on between the living, energetic mind and the inanimate and helpless body. Barrois, his features convulsed, his eyes suffused with blood, and his head thrown back, was lying at full length, beating the floor with his hands, while his legs had become so stiff that they looked as if they would rather break than bend. A slight appearance of foam was visible around the mouth, and he breathed painfully and with extreme difficulty. Villefort seemed stupefied with astonishment, and remained gazing intently on the scene before him without uttering a word. He had not seen Morel. After a moment of dumb contemplation, during which his face became pale and his hair seemed to stand on end, he sprang towards the door, crying out, "Doctor! Doctor, come instantly! Pray come!" "Madame! Madame!" cried Valentine, calling her stepmother and running upstairs to meet her. "Come quick, quick, and bring your bottle of smelling salts with you." "What is the matter?" said Madame de Villefort in a harsh and constrained tone. "Oh, come, come!" "But where is the doctor?" exclaimed Villefort. "Where is he?" Madame de Villefort now deliberately descended the staircase. In one hand she held her handkerchief, with which she appeared to be wiping her face, and in the other a bottle of English smelling salts. Her first look on entering the room was at Noirtier, whose face, independent of the emotion which such a scene could not fail of producing, proclaimed him to be in possession of his usual health. Her second glance was at the dying man. She turned pale, and her eye passed quickly from the servant and rested on the master. "In the name of heaven, madame," said Villefort, "where is the doctor? He was with you just now. You see this is a fit of apoplexy, and he might be saved if he could be but bled." "Has he eaten anything lately?" asked Madame de Villefort, eluding her husband's question. "Madame," replied Valentine, "he has not even breakfasted. He has been running very fast on an errand with which my grandfather charged him, and when he returned, took nothing but a glass of lemonade." "Ah," said Madame de Villefort, "why did he not take wine? Lemonade was a very bad thing for him." "Grandpapa's bottle of lemonade was standing just by his side. Poor Barrois was very thirsty, and was thankful to drink anything he could find." Madame de Villefort started. Noirtier looked at her with a glance of the most profound scrutiny. "He has such a short neck," said she. "Madame," said Villefort, "I ask where is Monsieur d'Avrigny? In God's name answer me!" "He is with Edward, who is not quite well," replied Madame de Villefort, no longer being able to avoid answering him. Villefort rushed upstairs to fetch him. "Take this," said Madame de Villefort, giving her smelling bottle to Valentine. "They will, no doubt, bleed him. Therefore I will retire, for I cannot endure the sight of blood." And she followed her husband upstairs. Morel now emerged from his hiding-place, where he had remained quite unperceived, so great had been the general confusion. "Go away as quickly as you can, Maximilian," said Valentine, "and stay till I send for you. Go!" Morel looked towards Noirtier for permission to retire. The old man, who had preserved all his usual coolness, made a sign to him to do so. The young man pressed Valentine's hands to his lips, and then left the house by a back staircase. At the same moment that he quitted the room, Villefort and the doctor entered by an opposite door. Barrois was now showing signs of returning consciousness. The crisis seemed past. A low moaning was heard, and he raised himself on one knee. d'Avrigny and Villefort laid him on a couch. "What do you prescribe, doctor?" demanded Villefort. "Give me some water and ether. You have some in the house, have you not?" "Yes." "Send for some oil of turpentine and tartar emetic." Villefort immediately dispatched a messenger. "And now let everyone retire." "Must I go too?" asked Valentine timidly. "Yes, mademoiselle, you especially," replied the doctor. Valentine looked at Monsieur d'Avrigny with astonishment, kissed her grandfather on the forehead, and left the room. The doctor closed the door after her with a gloomy air. Look, doctor," said Villefort. "He is quite coming round again. I really do not think, after all, it is anything of consequence. Monsieur d'Avrigny answered by a melancholy smile. How do you feel, Berrois? Asked he. A little better, sir. Will you drink some of this ether and water? I will try, but don't touch me. Why not? Because I feel that if you were only to touch me with the tip of your finger, the fit would return. Drink. Berrois took the glass and, raising it to his purple lips, took about half of the liquid offered him. Where do you suffer? Asked the doctor. Everywhere. I feel cramps over my whole body. Do you find any dazzling sensation before the eyes? Yes. Any noise in the ears? Frightful. When did you first feel that? Just now. Suddenly? Yes, like a clap of thunder. Did you feel nothing of it yesterday or the day before? Nothing. No drowsiness? None. What have you eaten today? I haven't eaten anything. I only drank a glass of my master's lemonade. That's all. And Berrois turned towards Noirtier, who, immovably fixed in his armchair, was contemplating this terrible scene without allowing a word or a movement to escape him. Where is the lemonade? Asked the doctor eagerly. Downstairs, in the decanter. Whereabouts downstairs? In the kitchen. Shall I go and fetch it, doctor? Inquired Villefort. No. Stay here and try to make Berrois drink the rest of this glass of ether and water. I will go myself and fetch the lemonade. d'Avrigny bounded towards the door, flew down the back staircase, and almost knocked down Madame de Villefort in his haste, who was herself going down to the kitchen. She cried out, but d'Avrigny paid no attention to her. Possessed with but one idea, he cleared the last 4 steps with a bound and rushed into the kitchen, where he saw the decanter, about 3 parts empty, still standing on the waiter, where it had been left. He darted upon it as an eagle would seize upon its prey. Panting with loss of breath, he returned to the room he had just left. Madame de Villefort was slowly ascending the steps which led to her room. Is this the decanter you spoke of? Asked d'Avrigny. Yes, doctor. Is this the same lemonade of which you partook? I believe so. What did it taste like? It had a bitter taste. The doctor poured some drops of the lemonade into the palm of his hand, put his lips to it, and, after having rinsed his mouth as a man does when he is tasting wine, he spat the liquor into the fireplace. It is no doubt the same, said he. Did you drink some too, Monsieur Noirtier? Yes. And did you also discover a bitter taste? Yes. Oh, doctor, cried Berrois, the fit is coming on again. Oh, do something for me. The doctor flew to his patient. That emetic, Villefort, see if it is coming. Villefort sprang into the passage, exclaiming, The emetic, is it come yet? No one answered. The most profound terror reigned throughout the house. If I had anything by means of which I could inflate the lungs, said d'Avrigny, looking around him, perhaps I might prevent suffocation, but there is nothing which would do, nothing. Oh, sir, cried Berrois, are you going to let me die without help? I'm dying. Save me. A pen, said the doctor. There was one lying on the table. He endeavored to introduce it into the mouth of the patient, who, in the midst of his convulsions, was making vain attempts to vomit, but the jaws were so clenched that the pen could not pass them. This second attack was much more violent than the first, and he had slipped from the couch to the ground, where he was writhing in agony. The doctor left him in this paroxysm, knowing that he could do nothing to alleviate it, and, going up to Noirtier, said abruptly, How do you find yourself? Well? Yes. Have you any weight on the chest, or does your stomach feel light and comfortable? Yes. Then you feel pretty much as you generally do after you have had the dose which I am accustomed to give you every Sunday? Yes. Did Berrois make your lemonade? Yes. Was it you who asked him to drink some of it? No. Was it Monsieur de Villefort? No. Madame? No. It was your granddaughter, then, was it not? Yes. A groan from Berrois, accompanied by a yawn which seemed to crack the very jawbones, attracted the attention of Monsieur d'Avrigny. He left Monsieur Noirtier and returned to the sick man. Berrois, said the doctor, can you speak? Berrois muttered a few unintelligible words. "Try and make an effort to do so, my good man," said d'Avrigny. Berrois reopened his bloodshot eyes. "Who made the lemonade?" "I did." "Did you bring it to your master directly after it was made?" "No." "You left it somewhere, then, in the meantime?" "Yes, I left it in the pantry, 'cause I was called away." "Who brought it into this room, then?" "Mademoiselle Valentine." d'Avrigny struck his forehead with his hand. "Gracious heaven!" exclaimed he. Doctor! Doctor!" cried Berrois, who felt another fit coming. "Will they never bring that emetic?" asked the doctor. "Here is a glass with one already prepared," said Villefort, entering the room. "Who prepared it?" "The chemist, who came here with me." "Drink it," said the doctor to Berrois. "Impossible, doctor. It's too late. My throat is closing up. I'm choking. My heart. My head. Oh, agony. Shall I suffer like this long?" "No, no, friend," replied the doctor. "You will soon cease to suffer." "Ah, I understand you," said the unhappy man. "My God, have mercy upon me." And, uttering a fearful cry, Berrois fell back as if he had been struck by lightning. d'Avrigny put his hand to his heart and placed a glass before his lips. "Well?" said Villefort. "Go to the kitchen and get me some syrup of violets." Villefort went immediately. "Do not be alarmed, Monsieur Noirtier," said d'Avrigny. "I am going to take my patient into the next room to bleed him. This sort of attack is very frightful to witness." And taking Berrois under the arms, he dragged him into an adjoining room, but almost immediately he returned to fetch the lemonade. Noirtier closed his right eye. "You want Valentine, do you not? I will tell them to send her to you." Villefort returned, and d'Avrigny met him in the passage. "Well, how is he now?" asked he. "Come in here," said d'Avrigny, and he took him into the chamber where the sick man lay. "Is he still in a fit?" said the procureur. "He is dead." Villefort drew back a few steps, and, clasping his hands, exclaimed with real amazement and sympathy, "Dead? And so soon, too?" "Yes, it is very soon," said the doctor, looking at the corpse before him. "But that ought not to astonish you. Monsieur and Madame de Saint Méran died as soon. People die very suddenly in your house, Monsieur de Villefort." "What?" cried the magistrate, with an accent of horror and consternation. "Are you still harping on that terrible idea?" "Still, sir, and I shall always do so," replied d'Avrigny, "for it has never for one instant ceased to retain possession of my mind, and that you may be quite sure I am not mistaken this time. Listen well to what I am going to say." The magistrate trembled convulsively. "There is a poison which destroys life almost without leaving any perceptible traces. I know it well. I have studied it in all its forms and in the effects which it produces. I recognize the presence of this poison in the case of poor Berrois as well as in that of Madame de Saint Méran. There is a way of detecting its presence. It restores the blue color of litmus paper reddened by an acid, and it turns syrup of violets green. We have no litmus paper, but see, here they come with the syrup of violets." The doctor was right. Steps were heard in the passage. Monsieur d'Avrigny opened the door and took from the hands of the chambermaid a cup which contained 2 or 3 spoonfuls of the syrup. He then carefully closed the door. "Look," said he to the procureur, whose heart beat so loudly that it might almost be heard. "Here is in this cup some syrup of violets, and this decanter contains the remainder of the lemonade of which Monsieur Noirtier and Berrois partook. If the lemonade be pure and inoffensive, the syrup will retain its color. If, on the contrary, the lemonade be drugged with poison, the syrup will become green. Look closely." The doctor then slowly poured some drops of the lemonade from the decanter into the cup, and, in an instant, a light, cloudy sediment began to form at the bottom of the cup. This sediment first took a blue shade, then, from a color of sapphire, it passed to that of opal, and from opal to emerald. Arrived at this last hue, it changed no more. The result of the experiment left no doubt whatsoever on the mind. "The unfortunate Berrois has been poisoned," said d'Avrigny. and I will maintain this assertion before God and man." Villefort said nothing, but he clasped his hands, opened his haggard eyes, and, overcome with his emotion, sank into a chair. End of Chapter 79. Chapter 80. The Accusation. Monsieur d'Avrigny soon restored the magistrate to consciousness, who had looked like a second corpse in that chamber of death.
"Death is in my house," cried Villefort.
"Say rather crime," replied the doctor.
"Monsieur d'Avrigny," cried Villefort, "I cannot tell you all I feel at this moment. Terror, grief, madness."
"Yes," said Monsieur d'Avrigny with an imposing calmness, "but I think it is now time to act. I think it is time to stop this torrent of mortality. I can no longer bear to be in possession of these secrets without the hope of seeing the victims in society generally revenged." Villefort cast a gloomy look round him.
"In my house," murmured he. "In my house."
"Come, magistrate," said Monsieur d'Avrigny. "Show yourself a man. As an interpreter of the law, do honor to your profession by sacrificing your selfish interests to it."
"You make me shudder, doctor. Do you talk of sacrifice?"
"I do."
"Do you then suspect anyone?"
"I suspect no one. Death raps at your door. It enters, it goes, not blindfolded, but circumspectly from room to room. Well, I follow its course, I track its passage. I adopt the wisdom of the ancients, and feel my way, for my friendship for your family and my respect for you are as a twofold bandage over my eyes. Well,
"Oh, speak, doctor. I shall have courage."
"Well, sir, you have in your establishment, or in your family, perhaps, one of the frightful monstrosities of which each century produces only one. Locusta and Agrippina, living at the same time, were an exception, and proved the determination of Providence to effect the entire ruin of the Roman Empire, sullied by so many crimes. Brunhilde and Fredegund were the results of the painful struggle of civilization in its infancy, when man was learning to control mind, were it even by an emissary from the realms of darkness. All these women had been, or were, beautiful. The same flower of innocence had flourished, or was still flourishing on that brow that is seen on the brow of the culprit in your house." Villefort shrieked, clasped his hands, and looked at the doctor with a supplicating air, but the latter went on without pity. "Seek whom the crime will profit," says an axiom of jurisprudence.
"Doctor," cried Villefort, "alas, doctor, how often has man's justice been deceived by those fatal words? I know not why, but I feel that this crime—"
"You acknowledge, then, the existence of the crime?"
"Yes, I see too plainly that it does exist. But it seems that it is intended to affect me personally. I fear an attack myself after all these disasters."
"Oh, man," murmured d'Avrigny, "the most selfish of all animals, the most personal of all creatures, who believes the earth turns, the sun shines, and death strikes for him alone. An ant cursing God from the top of a blade of grass. And have those who have lost their lives lost nothing? Monsieur de Saint-Méran, Madame de Saint-Méran, Monsieur Noirtier?"
"How? Monsieur Noirtier?"
"Yes. Think you it was the poor servant's life was coveted? No. No, like Shakespeare's Polonius, he died for another. It was Noirtier the lemonade was intended for. It is Noirtier, logically speaking, who drank it. The other drank it only by accident, and although Berrois is dead, it was Noirtier whose death was wished for."
"But why did it not kill my father?"
"I told you one evening in the garden after Madame de Saint-Méran's death, because his system is accustomed to that very poison, and the dose was trifling to him, which would be fatal to another. Because no one knows, not even the assassin, that, for the last 12 months, I have given Monsieur Noirtier brucine for his paralytic affection, while the assassin is not ignorant, for he has proved that brucine is a violent poison."
"Oh, have pity! Have pity!"
murmured Villefort, wringing his hands. "Follow the culprit's steps. He first kills Monsieur de Saint-Méran."
"Oh, doctor!"
"I would swear to it. What I have heard of his symptoms agrees too well with what I have seen in the other cases." Villefort ceased to contend. He only groaned. "He first kills Monsieur de Saint-Méran," repeated the doctor. "Then Madame de Saint-Méran. A double fortune to inherit." Villefort wiped the perspiration from his forehead. "Listen attentively."
"Alas," stammered Villefort, I do not lose a single word."
"Monsieur Noirtier," resumed Monsieur d'Avrigny in the same pitiless tone, "Monsieur Noirtier had once made a will against you, against your family, in favor of the poor. In fact, Monsieur Noirtier is spared because nothing is expected from him. But he has no sooner destroyed his first will and made a second than, for fear he should make a third, he is struck down. The will was made the day before yesterday, I believe. You see, there has been no time lost."
"Mercy, Monsieur d'Avrigny."
"No mercy, sir. The physician has a sacred mission on earth, and to fulfill it he begins at the source of life and goes down to the mysterious darkness of the tomb. When crime has been committed, and God, doubtless in anger, turns away his face, it is for the physician to bring the culprit to justice."
"Have mercy on my child, sir," murmured Villefort.
"You see it is yourself who have first named her. You, her father."
"Have pity on Valentine. Listen, it is impossible. I would as willingly accuse myself. Valentine's heart is pure as a diamond or a lily."
"No pity, Procurer. The crime is flagrant. Mademoiselle herself packed all the medicines which were sent to Monsieur de Saint-Méran, and Monsieur de Saint-Méran is dead. Mademoiselle de Villefort prepared all the cooling draughts which Madame de Saint-Méran took, and Madame de Saint-Méran is dead. Mademoiselle de Villefort took from the hands of Berrois, who was sent out, the lemonade which Monsieur Noirtier had every morning, and he has escaped by a miracle. Mademoiselle de Villefort is the culprit. She is the poisoner. To you, as the king's attorney, I denounce Mademoiselle de Villefort. Do your duty."
"Doctor, I can resist no longer. I can no longer defend myself. I believe you, but for pity's sake, spare my life, my honor."
"Monsieur de Villefort," replied the doctor with increased vehemence, "there are occasions when I dispense with all foolish human circumspection. If your daughter had committed only one crime, and I saw her meditating another, I would say, warn her, punish her, let her pass the remainder of her life in a convent weeping and praying. If she had committed 2 crimes, I would say, here, Monsieur de Villefort is a poison that the prisoner is not acquainted with, one that has no known antidote, quick as thought, rapid as lightning, mortal as a thunderbolt. Give her that poison, recommending her soul to God, and save your honor and your life, for it is yours she aims at, and I can picture her approaching your pillow with her hypocritical smiles and her sweet exhortations. Woe to you, Monsieur de Villefort, if you do not strike first. This is what I would say had she only killed 2 persons, but she has seen 3 deaths, has contemplated 3 murdered persons, has knelt by 3 corpses. To the scaffold with the prisoner. To the scaffold. Do you talk of your honor? Do what I tell you, and immortality awaits you." Villefort fell on his knees.
"Listen," said he, "I have not the strength of mind you have, or rather that which you would not have if instead of my daughter Valentine, your daughter Madeline were concerned."
The doctor turned pale.
"Doctor, every son of woman is born to suffer and to die. I am content to suffer and to await death."
"Beware," said Monsieur d'Avrigny. "It may come slowly. You will see it approach after having struck your father, your wife, and perhaps your son." Villefort, suffocating, pressed the doctor's arm.
"Listen," cried he. "Pity me. Help me. Now, my daughter is not guilty. If you drag us both before a tribunal, I will still say, no, my daughter is not guilty. There is no crime in my house. I will not acknowledge a crime in my house, for when crime enters a dwelling, it is like death. It does not come alone. Listen, what does it signify to you if I am murdered? Are you my friend? Are you a man? Have you a heart? No, you are a physician. Well, I tell you, I will not drag my daughter before a tribunal and give her up to the executioner. The bare idea would kill me, would drive me like a madman to dig my heart out with my fingernails. And if you were mistaken, doctor, if it were not my daughter, if I should come one day, pale as a spectre, and say to you, 'Assassin, you have killed my child,' hold, if that should happen, although I am a Christian, Monsieur d'Avrigny, I should kill myself."
"Well," said the doctor after a moment's silence, "I will wait Villefort looked at him as if he had doubted his words. "Only," continued Monsieur d'Avrigny with a slow and solemn tone, "if anyone falls ill in your house, if you feel yourself attacked, do not send for me, for I will come no more. I will consent to share this dreadful secret with you, but I will not allow shame and remorse to grow and increase in my conscience, as crime and misery will in your house."
"Then you abandon me, doctor?"
"Yes, for I can follow you no farther, and I only stop at the foot of the scaffold. Some further discovery will be made, which will bring this dreadful tragedy to a close. Adieu."
"I entreat you, doctor."
"All the horrors that disturb my thoughts make your house odious and fatal. Adieu, sir."
One single word more, doctor. You go, leaving me in all the horror of my situation after increasing it by what you have revealed to me. But what will be reported of the sudden death of the poor old servant?"
"True," said Monsieur d'Avrigny. "We will return." The doctor went out first, followed by Monsieur de Villefort. The terrified servants were on the stairs and in the passage where the doctor would pass. "Sir," said d'Avrigny to Villefort, so loud that all might hear, "poor Barrois has led too sedentary a life of late. Accustomed formerly to ride on horseback or in the carriage to the four corners of Europe, the monotonous walk around that armchair has killed him. His blood has thickened. He was stout, had a short, thick neck. He was attacked with apoplexy, and I was called in too late. By the way," added he in a low tone, "take care to throw away that cup of syrup of violets in the ashes." The doctor, without shaking hands with Villefort, without adding a word to what he had said, went out, amid the tears and lamentations of the whole household. The same evening, all Villefort's servants, who had assembled in the kitchen, and had a long consultation, came to tell Madame de Villefort that they wished to leave. No entreaty, no proposition of increased wages could induce them to remain. To every argument they replied, "We must go, for death is in this house." They all left in spite of prayers and entreaties, testifying their regret at leaving so good a master and mistress, and especially Mademoiselle Valentine, so good, so kind, and so gentle. Villefort looked at Valentine as they said this. She was in tears, and, strange as it was, in spite of the emotions he felt at the sight of these tears, he looked also at Madame de Villefort, and it appeared to him as if a slightly gloomy smile had passed over her thin lips, like a meteor seen passing inauspiciously between two clouds in a stormy sky. End of chapter 80.
And cut. That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for listening to today's episode of I've Been Meaning to Read That, with me, your host, Dan. If you want to learn more about the show, you can follow us on Instagram at Meaning to Read and TikTok at I've Been Meaning. If you want to support the show to help keep it going, you can find me on Venmo at Dingus Donut, DINGUSDONUT. Supporters get a shout out on the show, and even more important, get to vote on the next book that we read. No matter what, I'll see you for our next episode. Until then, read those books you've been meaning to read, and have a lovely, lovely day.